Say you're sorry. Brady Lawson grabbed Jake Morrison by the hoodie and slammed him into the lockers. Blood filled Jake's mouth. 3 seniors had the new girl pinned against the trophy case. And Jake, a broke 17-year-old who couldn't afford his mother's heart pills, had stepped between them like a wall. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her father was the president of the Hells Angels. He just saw a girl about to get hurt, and his body moved before his brain caught up. He spit blood on the floor and said one word. No. That single word would burn Ironfield, Texas, to the ground. If this story grips you the way I think it will, subscribe to this channel right now and stay with Jake's story all the way to the end. Drop a comment. Tell me what city you're watching from, so I can see just how far this story has traveled. Jake Morrison's jaw cracked sideways before his brain caught up with his body. 1 second he was walking to second period, backpack slung low, head down, the way poor kids learn to walk in rich towns. The next second he heard a girl's voice, thin, scared, trying not to shake, and 3 Letterman jackets crowding her against the trophy case like wolves who'd found something soft. He didn't think. Thinking was a luxury for people who had time. Jake just moved. Walk away, he said. Brady Lawson turned first. The mayor's son. 17 years old with a face that had never once been told no. His Letterman jacket hung open like a king's robe, and his eyes carried that specific kind of cruelty that only comes from knowing nobody will ever stop you. What did you say to me? I said walk away. Brady's fist came fast. Not skilled, just confident. It caught Jake clean on the jaw, and blood burst inside his mouth like a bag of warm copper. Jake's head snapped sideways. His vision swam, but his feet stayed planted. The hallway froze. 30 kids. 40. Phones lifted like periscopes. Not one hand reached out to help. Connor Webb, Brady's permanent shadow, thick-necked and mean, shoved Jake's shoulder. You deaf trailer boy? Move! Jake didn't move. Behind him, the girl pressed her backpack to her chest like a shield. He could hear her breathing, fast, shallow, the kind of breathing that comes right before crying or fighting. She was choosing fighting. Brady hit him again, harder this time. Jake's skull bounced off a locker, and white sparks streaked across his vision. Pain shot through his shoulder blade. His knees buckled for one terrible second, then locked. Say you're sorry, Brady said, grabbing a fistful of Jake's hoodie and pulling him close enough to smell spearmint gum and entitlement. Say it, and I'll let you crawl back to your trailer. Jake spit blood on the tile floor, a long red streak. No. The word landed like a brick through glass. Brady blinked. Connor shifted his weight. Kyle Dunn, the third one, a follower so spineless he made shadows look brave, took a half step back. Nobody said no to Brady Lawson. Not in Ironfield. Not in this school. Not anywhere the mayor's name carried weight, and in this town, it carried weight everywhere. Brady's grip tightened on Jake's hoodie. You think you're tough? You work at a laundromat, Morrison. Your mom coughs all night. Everybody hears it through those paper walls. Jake's stomach clenched. Not from the punch, from the fact that Brady knew about his mother, knew about the trailer, knew about the walls. Brady leaned past Jake and brought his face close to the girl's, close enough that she flinched, close enough that Jake felt her step back into his spine. Tell your daddy you made friends, Brady murmured. The girl's chin lifted. Her voice came out thin, but it didn't break. My name is Savannah. Brady chuckled like she'd told a joke. Savannah Cross. That's cute. The name hit the hallway like a dropped grenade. Cross. Kids shifted. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. In Ironfield, Texas, the name Cross meant one thing and one thing only: Hell's Angels. But Jake didn't care about names. Jake cared about one thing: getting to his shift at the laundromat. His mother, Deborah, needed her heart medication. Every hour he missed was an hour closer to an empty pill bottle and an ambulance he couldn't pay for. The bell rang. Brady released Jake's hoodie like dropping something dirty. He straightened his jacket, ran a hand through his hair, and walked away like a man leaving a business meeting. Connor followed. Kyle practically ran. The crowd dissolved. 40 witnesses became 40 ghosts. A teacher's shoes had clicked nearby during the whole thing. Clicked, slowed, and kept walking. That silence cut deeper than any fist. Jake slid down the locker until he was sitting on the cold tile. Blood dripped from his lip onto his jeans. His shoulder screamed. His jaw felt like it had been rehung on the wrong hinge. Savannah crouched beside him. Her eyes were green and fierce and full of something he couldn't name. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Go to class," Jake said. "They're going to keep doing it." "Then don't be alone." She stared at him for a long, searching beat, like she was trying to figure out if he was real. "What's your name?" He almost lied. Lying was safer. Lying kept you small and invisible, which was the only armor a poor kid had in a rich man's town. But something about the way she held herself, scared but refusing to fold, shaking but standing, made him tell the truth. "Jake." "Jake," she repeated. Quiet, careful, like she was locking it into a vault she'd never lose the key to. "Thank you. Watch your back." She walked away fast, shoulders squared like she was wearing armor nobody could see. Jake sat on that floor for another 30 seconds, blood cooling on his chin, ribs aching, brain running the math that governed his entire life. Hours times dollars minus bills equals survival. Today's math was already broken. He didn't know it yet, but that punch had just rewritten the equation for every person in Ironfield. Vice Principal Harding's office smelled like stale coffee and cowardice. Jake sat in the plastic chair with blood still crusting on his lip, while Harding slid a printed form across the desk. An apology letter. Jake's name was already typed at the bottom. "Sign it," Harding said. "We all move on." Jake looked at the form. 3 paragraphs of nothing. No mention of who hit whom. No mention of 3 seniors cornering a girl. Just a neat little story where Jake Morrison engaged in disruptive behavior and was deeply sorry for the conflict. "I didn't start it," Jake said. "Jake," Harding leaned forward like a man delivering sad news. "I understand you feel strongly, but this is a complicated situation. Brady Lawson's father is very involved in this community. The best thing for everyone, including you, is to sign that form and move forward." "I didn't swing, not once." "I hear you, but perceptions..." "Perceptions?" Jake's voice went flat. "He hit me, twice, in front of 30 people. There are cameras in that hallway." Something flickered across Harding's face. Quick, guilty, gone. "The cameras had a technical issue this morning." Jake felt the floor shift under him. Not literally, but something fundamental cracked in the way he understood the world. "A technical issue," Jake repeated. "These things happen. Today, the day someone got punched in your hallway. The cameras broke today." Harding's desk phone buzzed. He picked it up fast. Too fast, like he'd been waiting for it. His voice changed instantly. Smoother. Smaller. "Yes, Sheriff Tate. No, I understand. Yes, sir. Absolutely." Jake sat very still, His bruised jaw throbbed in time with his heartbeat. He watched Harding's face soften into submission with every "yes, sir," and understood something that hit harder than Brady's fist. The school, the sheriff, and the mayor were all one machine, and that machine had just been pointed at him. Harding hung up. His eyes didn't meet Jake's. "You want to make enemies you can't afford, son." Jake's hands were shaking under the desk, not from fear, from the slow, grinding realization that he was completely alone in the system built to crush people exactly like him. "They already chose me," Jake said. Harding suspended him for the day. 1-day suspension. Cooling off period. No paperwork on Brady, no investigation. No mention of the girl who'd been cornered. Jake didn't sign the apology. He picked up his backpack and walked out of the building with his chin up and his stomach in knots. He didn't go home. He couldn't. Home meant his mother's face, his mother's questions, his mother's worry carving lines deeper into skin that was already too thin. Home meant the pill bottle that needed refilling and the insurance that barely covered it. Jake went to work. Jennings' laundromat sat on the corner of 5th and Route 12, a cinder block box with buzzing fluorescent lights and washers that shook like they were trying to escape. Mr. Jennings was a decent man in an indecent town. He paid Jake $8 an hour under the table and looked the other way when Jake's hands shook from exhaustion. But today, Jennings met Jake at the door. His face was gray. His hands worked a dish rag like a rosary. "Kid, Lord, look at your face." "I can work," Jake said. "Jake," Jennings' voice cracked. "I can't." The words hung in the air between them. Jake felt them before he understood them. "I got a call," Jennings said. He couldn't look Jake in the eye. "They said if I let you work, I'll have inspections by morning. Code violations, health department, the whole works." "Who called?" Jennings shook his head, not refusing to answer, just too ashamed to say it out loud. "I'm sorry, kid. I got my own family." Jake stood in the doorway for a long moment. The machines hummed behind Jennings. Warm air pushed past both of them and disappeared into the cold. $8 an hour. The only thing standing between Deborah Morrison and a missed heartbeat. "I understand," Jake said. Because he did. That was the worst part. He understood perfectly. In Ironfield, you either bent for the people in charge, or they broke you. Jennings had a family. Jennings had bills. Jennings had a building that could be shut down with one phone call from the right office. Jake walked away. Broke. Bruised. The afternoon sun was sharp and cold and offered nothing. He passed the pharmacy on Main Street and stopped. Through the window he could see the counter where they kept his mother's medication. The heart pills she took every morning. The ones that kept her rhythm steady and her blood thin enough to flow through a system that had been failing for years. He had $17 in his pocket. The pills cost $140 with insurance. Without insurance, $300. The refill wasn't due for 6 days, but something told him, a cold, crawling instinct, that 6 days was about to become today. The trailer was quiet when Jake got home. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that means someone is sleeping or someone is pretending to sleep so they don't have to face what's coming. Jake opened the door slowly. His mother lay on the couch under 2 blankets, her breathing shallow, her face pale, even by Deborah Morrison standards. She'd been beautiful once. Jake had seen the photos. High school. A smile that took up the whole frame. Before the heart condition. Before the bills. Before Jake's father walked out and left them with a trailer that leaked and a medical system that charged more for dying than living. He moved to the kitchen cabinet where she kept her pills. The shelf was empty. Jake stared at the empty shelf. He checked the counter, the bathroom, the bedroom, the little table by the front door where she sometimes left them. Gone. The bottle had been on the porch steps that morning. Jake had seen it when he left for school. He'd reminded himself to bring it inside. But then the bus came, and he ran, and Connor Webb's voice played back in his head. Something he'd said in the hallway, half-whispered, meant to be overheard. "Your mom's gonna love the dark." Jake's blood went cold. Not angry cold, terrified cold. The kind of cold that starts in your chest and spreads outward until your fingers go numb and your thoughts turn to ice. They took her pills. They came to his home, to the trailer park, to the porch where his sick mother sat in the mornings, and they took her medication. He picked up the phone and called the pharmacy. The pharmacist's voice was professionally apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison. Your insurance won't approve an early refill. You'll need doctor authorization for a replacement." "How do I get that?" "The authorization goes through the county health office." The county health office, located in the municipal building, run by the county board, chaired by Mayor Lawson. Jake hung up. His hand was shaking so badly, the phone nearly fell. The same name that had been punching him in the hallway that morning now stood between his mother and her next heartbeat. Every door led to the same room. Every phone call ended at the same desk. Every road in Ironfield ran through the same man. Deborah coughed from the couch, a wet, rattling sound that Jake had memorized the way other kids memorize song lyrics. He knew the good coughs and the bad coughs. This one was bad. "Baby?" Her voice was thin. "You're home early." Jake forced his face into something that looked like normal. "Half day, teacher thing." She saw the bruises anyway. Mothers always do. Her hand lifted toward his cheek and hovered there, trembling, afraid to touch and make it worse. "What happened to your face?" "Nothing. It's fine." "Jake." "Mom, it's fine." Her eyes moved across his bruises like she was reading a story written in purple and blue. "Where's your work shirt?" "Jennings gave me the day off." She knew he was lying. He knew she knew. They both let the lie stand because the truth was too heavy for a room this small. Jake went to the kitchen and filled a glass of water. He brought it to her with 2 crackers, all they had, and sat on the floor beside the couch. "Did you take your pill this morning?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. "I thought I did, but I can't find the bottle." She paused, coughed again. "I must have left it somewhere." Jake's throat tightened until breathing hurt. "I'll find it." "Don't worry about it, baby. I'll be fine." But she wouldn't be fine. They both knew it. Without those pills, her heart would start skipping. First a flutter, then a stammer, then a silence that no ambulance could reverse. Jake sat on the kitchen floor after she fell asleep and stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out how a 17-year-old kid with $17 and a bruised jaw was supposed to fight a mayor, a sheriff, and a school system that had decided he was the problem. He didn't have an answer. But he wasn't going to sign that apology. He knew that much. He knew that the way he knew his own name. Deep, permanent, beyond argument. Whatever came next, they'd have to drag it out of him. Across town, Savannah Cross walked into the Hells Angels warehouse, and every man in the room looked up like a rifle had been cocked. She moved through the space quickly, past the row of motorcycles lined up like a chrome army, past the workbenches covered in tools and engine parts, past the men in leather vests who tracked her with careful eyes. At the far end, a tall man straightened from a bench. He wiped his hands on a rag with slow, deliberate movements. The kind of deliberate that meant his mind was already 6 steps ahead of his body. Dominic Cross, president of the Hells Angels. Silver-streaked blonde hair, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the hill country. Eyes that could empty a room without raising his voice. His gaze found the bruise on Savannah's arm first, then the torn strap of her bag, then the faint smear of blood on her cuff, blood that wasn't hers. What happened? His voice was low, calm the way a loaded weapon is calm. Savannah didn't cry. She'd trained herself out of that years ago. But her voice shook once before she locked it down. First day. 3 seniors cornered me by the trophy case. Brady Lawson, Connor Webb, and a third guy I don't know. They grabbed me. Brady said, "Tell your daddy you made friends." The room went dead silent. Not quiet. Dead. The kind of silence that has teeth. Every man in leather went rigid. A mechanic's wrench stopped mid-turn. A phone went dark. Someone's boot scraped the concrete, and then nothing. Dominic didn't move. His expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes shifted. Something ancient and dangerous and absolutely, terrifyingly patient. "Tell your daddy you made friends," he repeated. Each word placed carefully, like he was memorizing them for a purpose no one in the room wanted to imagine. "And there was a kid," Savannah continued, steadier now. "Jake. I don't know his last name. Morrison, I think. He stepped between them. He didn't know me. He didn't ask who I was. He just put himself in front of me and told them to walk away." What happened to him? Brady hit him, twice, hard. Tried to make him apologize. He wouldn't. He spit blood on the floor and said no. Dominic's jaw tightened. 1 degree. 2. His hand stopped working the rag. A kid who doesn't know you took 2 punches for you. Yes. And refused to apologize. Yes. Dominic looked across the room at a younger member leaning against a bike stand. Clean cut. Calm eyes. Phone already in his hand like he'd been born holding it. Chains. "Yeah, Prez. Find Jake Morrison. Find those boys' families. Find out why my daughter's school protects them." He paused. Quiet. Chains nodded, already typing. Quiet. Dominic turned to the room. His voice carried the way thunder carries. Not loud, just unavoidable. "Nobody goes near that school wearing a cut. Nobody runs their mouth. Nobody makes a move that I don't approve first. We don't make noise we can't control. You hear me?" A chorus of voices. "Yes, Prez." He looked back at Savannah. Something shifted in his face. The president dissolving. The father emerging. "You're staying with Darla tonight." Savannah's spine stiffened. "I'm not a child. This isn't about your age." His voice was gentle now, but the gentleness had iron underneath. "It's about them thinking they can touch you to get to me. That's a different game, and I need you safe while I figure out the board." Savannah's anger flickered, then dimmed. Not because she agreed, because she recognized the truth when it was handed to her without decoration. "I didn't want you to do something stupid," she said quietly. Dominic's mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile on a face that rarely allowed one. "Stupid gets people dead, baby girl. We're not doing stupid." He pulled her close, one arm, brief. The kind of hug that says everything in 3 seconds. Then he let go and turned back to Chains. "I want to know everything about that boy by midnight. Where he lives, who he's got, what they've already done to him." Chains looked up from his phone. "President, based on what I'm seeing, they've already started." Dominic's eyes went flat. "Then we're already behind." Brady sat across from him. Ice Pack Brady sat across from him. Ice Pack pressed to his knuckles, looking less like a boy who'd been in a fight and more like a boy who was waiting to be told he'd done a good job. The mayor didn't ask if Brady was hurt. He didn't ask if the girl was okay. He asked one question. Did anyone see? Half the hallway, Brady said. Nobody did anything. Good. The mayor picked up his phone. Sheriff Tate, we've got a situation. A kid named Jake Morrison decided he wants attention. Tate's laugh came through the speaker like gravel rolling downhill. Morrison? Trailer park kid. Yeah, I know the name. Mother's a mess. Kid works odd jobs. Nobody. I want him quiet, the mayor said, and I want it clean. Clean is what I do. Tate's voice was easy, comfortable, the voice of a man who'd done this before. I'll have Jennings pull his shifts. Already made that call. And I'll have the county office flag his mother's insurance. Nothing illegal on paper, just inconvenient. What about the school? Harding's handled. Cameras are down. The kid didn't sign the apology, but that's fine. We suspend him, put it on his record, and if he talks, it's a troubled kid making accusations. Mayor Lawson swirled his bourbon. And the cross girl? A pause. The first one in the conversation. That's a different conversation. I didn't ask for a different conversation. I asked for the same one. Mayor, you know who her father is. I know exactly who her father is, and I know he's not above the law in my town. Tate was quiet for a moment. Your town. Right. I'll keep it contained. The mayor hung up. He looked at his son. Brady was grinning. That same grin he wore in the hallway. The grin that said the world was a toy, and he was the only one allowed to play with it. You did fine, the mayor told his son. But next time, don't leave marks where cameras might see. Cameras were off, Brady said. Cameras are always off, until they're not. The mayor leaned forward. Listen to me. That Morrison kid, he's going to fold. They always fold. But if he doesn't, you stay away from him. Let the adults handle it. You understand? Brady's grin faded slightly. I'm not scared of some trailer park. I didn't say scared. I said smart. There's a difference. Learn it. Brady left the room. The mayor finished his bourbon and made one more call. Tate, one more thing. The Morrison boy's mother takes heart medication. Daily. Make sure the next refill gets complicated. A long pause. Then, that's his mother, Mayor. I'm aware of who it is. She's sick. Then she'll want her son to behave, won't she? The line went dead. Mayor Lawson set his phone down and stared at the wall where his family portrait hung. Him, his wife, Brady, the dog, the house, the smile. All of it painted in the warm light of a man who believed he owned everything in frame, and everything beyond it. He didn't know it yet, but somewhere across town, a man with silver-streaked hair and a room full of brothers was sitting in the same kind of silence, the same kind of patience, the same kind of certainty. The difference was that one of them had earned it, and the other one was about to find out what that difference cost. Chains move through Ironfield the way water moves through cracks. Quiet, patient, finding every gap in the wall. No motorcycle, no leather, no patches, just a plain gray sedan and a face that nobody remembered 5 minutes after seeing it. He parked at the Route 12 diner, ordered black coffee, and sat in the booth nearest the deputy table. 2 Ironfield County deputies hunched over pancakes, talking loud enough that Chains didn't even need to lean in. Cross girl caused a whole mess yesterday, the first one said, fork waving. Tate's already got Harding on a leash. Told him to keep it contained. The second deputy snorted. Mayor's hot. Wants the trailer kid squeezed until he pops. Kid's got nothing. No dad, sick mom, works at a laundromat. What's he gonna do? Fold shirts at us? They both laughed. Chains didn't. He memorized their badge numbers, finished his coffee, paid cash, left no impression, and made one call from the parking lot. President Sheriff's in it. Mayor too. They're already squeezing the kid. Job's gone. Mother's medication flagged. They're building a story that makes him the aggressor. Dominic's voice came through the phone like cold iron. How deep? Deep enough that the sheriff called the school during Jake's meeting with the vice principal. They killed the camera footage same morning. This isn't reactive. They had a playbook ready. Silence on the line. The kind of silence that weighs more than words. No noise, Dominic said finally. No noise, Chains confirmed. Just facts. Chains drove to Ironfield High and waited in the parking lot until the last car belonged to someone with a lanyard and a guilty conscience. Vice Principal Harding walked out at 5:47, briefcase in one hand, keys jangling with the nervous energy of a man who hadn't slept right. Chains stepped out of his sedan. Mr. Harding. Harding's whole body flinched. Who are you? Nobody important. But I know the hallway cameras didn't malfunction yesterday. Harding's face went white. Not pink, not flushed, white. Like the blood had somewhere better to be. You need to leave school property. A student was assaulted in your hallway. You saw the footage. You made him sign an apology. Then the sheriff called your desk phone and you said yes, sir, 3 times. Harding's keys were shaking now. Tiny metal sounds in the empty lot. I don't know what you're talking about. Here's the choice. Chains kept his voice level, almost kind. That was the trick. Kindness scared people more than threats because it meant you had control. You give me the footage or you tell me who erased it. Either way, that footage exists somewhere. Hard drives have memories even when people don't. There is no footage. Chains nodded like he'd expected the lie and was simply cataloging it for later. Then tell me who wanted there to be none. He slipped a plain white business card into Harding's trembling hand. You've got 48 hours to decide what kind of man you are, Mr. Harding. The kind who protects children, or the kind who helps hurt them. He walked back to his sedan. Harding stood frozen in that parking lot, staring at the card, and Chains could see in the rear-view mirror the exact moment the man's conscience started eating him alive. Good. Conscience was a slow poison, and Chains had plenty of time. At 9:30 that night, 3 firm knocks hit the Morrison trailer door. A pause, then 2 more. Jake grabbed the heavy flashlight from the kitchen drawer, the only thing in the house that could pass for a weapon. His mother was asleep on the couch. Her breathing had been wrong all evening, shallower than usual, with pauses that made Jake's heart stop every time. Who is it? Jake Morrison? A man's voice, low, controlled, unfamiliar. I'm not here to hurt you, but you need to open this door. Jake kept the chain latched and cracked it 2 inches. The man on the porch was young, late 20s maybe, with calm eyes and hands that stayed visible and open. No badge, no weapon, no threat in his posture. His gaze moved once past Jake's shoulder toward the living room where Deborah's cough had just rattled through the walls. He didn't stare. He registered it the way a man registers a wound, quickly, without flinching, already calculating how to fix it. Because they're already hurting you, the man said, and they're going to keep doing it until you fold or break. Who are you? The man reached into his jacket pocket slowly, deliberately slowly, the way you move when you want someone to see there's no danger, and pulled out a small white pharmacy bag. He held it up. Jake's stomach dropped through the floor. Your mom's medication, the man said. Same dosage, same label, verified. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to keep her alive tonight. Jake stared at the bag. His mother's name printed on the label. The exact prescription that had vanished from his porch that morning. The pills that stood between Deborah Morrison and a cardiac event that no ambulance in Ironfield could reach in time. Where did you get that? From a pharmacy 2 counties over that doesn't answer to Mayor Lawson. Cash changes rules when insurance won't. What do you want? To talk. And to make sure you don't sign anything you shouldn't sign tomorrow. The school's going to push a story where you're the villain. The sheriff's going to back it. And someone's going to offer you an easy way out that comes with strings you won't see until they're around your neck. Jake's hand was shaking on the door chain. Every instinct told him to close the door. Every instinct except the one that had been screaming all day. The one that said the system he'd trusted to protect him was the same system trying to destroy him. He slid the chain aside. He didn't invite the man in. Talk out here. My name's Chains. That's not a name, Chains almost smiled. It's what people call me. And the girl you stepped in front of yesterday, her father saw the bruise on her arm and started asking questions. Jake felt the air change. Savannah. Cross. He swallowed. The Hells Angels. Yeah. Jake's grip tightened on the pharmacy bag. So this is what? Payment? I helped your boss's daughter, so now you bring pills and I owe somebody? This is me making sure your mom doesn't miss a dose because some high school punk wanted to feel like his daddy. I didn't help her because of who her dad is. I didn't even know her name. I know, Chain said. That's exactly why I'm standing here. He laid it out clean. No sugarcoating, no manipulation. Just facts arranged in a line like dominoes. Brady Lawson's father controlled the town. Connor Webb's family had sheriff connections going back 2 generations. Kyle Dunn's parents owed the mayor favors they'd never finish repaying. That's why the school killed the footage. That's why Harding tried to make Jake sign. That's why Jennings pulled his shifts. That's why the medication disappeared. Here's what happens if you do nothing, Chain said. They squeeze your job. Done. They squeeze your mom's meds. Done. They squeeze your school record until you're the kid who started a fight. And then, if you ever open your mouth about what really happened, nobody listens. Because you're already the troubled trailer kid with a history. Jake felt the walls of his life shrinking. Every word Chain said fit perfectly into the holes that had been opening all day. So what am I supposed to do? I'm 17. I've got $17. I can't fight the mayor. Chains held out a business card. Plain white. One name. Megan Steele, attorney at law. You don't fight the mayor. You fight the record. She's meeting you tomorrow morning at the Route 12 diner. You give a formal statement. Clean, factual, no emotion. Names, timeline, who hit who. She files it with the state, not the county. Above Tate. Above Lawson. Above every hand in this town that's been squeezing you. Jake stared at the card. I can't afford a lawyer. Jake, you can't afford not to have one. Chains reached into his jacket again and pulled out a cheap prepaid phone. He set it on the porch railing. Your phone is easy to track. This one stays off unless you need it. One number saved. You call it if anyone shows up at this door tonight. Tonight? Why would anyone? Because Sheriff Tate doesn't like loose ends. And right now, you're the loosest end in Ironfield. Chains started down the porch steps, then stopped. One more thing. If Tate shows up here tonight, you don't open the door. You don't talk to him. You call that number and you stay inside. He can do that? Just show up at my house? He can do anything he thinks nobody will challenge. That's the whole problem. Chains drove off slowly, headlights cutting through the dark like they had nowhere to be and all the time in the world. Jake went inside. His mother had shifted on the couch. Her eyes were half open, unfocused, searching for him the way she always did when she heard the door. He sat beside her and opened the pharmacy bag. Her pills. The right pills. He shook one out and held it up with a glass of water. "Here, Mom. You missed your evening dose." Deborah took the pill. The relief softened her face like sunlight through curtains. But the worry stayed in her eyes. It always stayed. "Where did you get these? The pharmacy said—" "A friend helped." "What friend? Jake, you don't have—" She stopped herself. Not because it wasn't true, but because saying it out loud would break something neither of them could fix. "Don't worry," Jake said. "Please, just take the pill and rest." She touched his bruised cheek with trembling fingers. Her hand felt like paper. "You're getting mixed up in something, baby." Jake swallowed against the tightness in his throat. "I already was, Mom. I just didn't know it until today." Deborah's eyes filled. She didn't argue. She'd lived in Ironfield long enough to know how the machine worked. She'd watched it grind down better people than her son. She took the pill. She closed her eyes. Jake pulled the blanket to her chin and sat on the kitchen floor with his back against the cabinet where the missing bottle should have been. He didn't sleep. He waited. At 11:47 p.m., footsteps climbed the porch. Heavy. Deliberate. The boots of a man who wanted you to hear him coming. A knuckle tapped the thin wood. Not hard. Almost friendly. That made it worse. "Jake Morrison, open up. Sheriff's office." Jake's blood turned to ice water. His mother shifted on the couch, and he pressed his hand over his own mouth to keep from making a sound. "Come on, Jake. Just a conversation. Nothing formal." A second voice, younger, cockier, Deputy Nolan. "Just open up, Morrison. Make it easy on yourself." Jake powered on the prepaid phone. His fingers shook so badly it took 3 tries to unlock it. He pressed the single saved number and held the phone to his ear. 1 ring. Half of a second ring. "Talk to me." Chain's voice. Instant, alert, like he'd been waiting. "He's here," Jake whispered. "Tate, at my door." "Don't open it. Don't speak to him. Stay exactly where you are." On the porch, Tate's voice turned warm, friendly. The voice of a man who'd practiced sounding kind until it was indistinguishable from the real thing. "Jake, I know today was rough. I'm not here about the school thing. I just want to make sure you and your mom are okay. Deborah, right? She doing all right? I heard she's been having trouble with her medication. Real shame, that." Jake's vision tunneled. His mother's name in the sheriff's mouth sounded like a threat wrapped in cotton. "That's how he works," Chain said in his ear. "He doesn't need to hit you. He just needs you to feel like he can reach everyone you love." The deputy knocked harder. "Open the door, kid. Don't make this difficult." Tate's voice dropped lower, conspiratorial, like he was sharing a secret between friends. "Here's my advice, Jake. Go to school tomorrow. Sign that apology. Tell Principal Sellers you're sorry for the misunderstanding. Then, Mayor Lawson stops calling me, and your life goes back to normal. Simple as that." Jake pressed his hand flat against the wall to stop it from shaking. "And if you don't," Tate continued, "well, we come back with paperwork. And paperwork means a record. And a record means your mom gets stressed. And stress isn't great for a woman with a heart condition, is it?" Deborah's eyes opened. She'd heard. Jake could see it in the way her face changed. Fear first, then something harder. Something that looked like fury compressed into a space too small to hold it. She started to sit up. Jake shook his head fiercely. "Stay down. Stay quiet." Tate waited. The silence stretched like wire pulled tight enough to sing. "All right," the sheriff said finally. A sigh, theatrical, rehearsed. You think about it, Jake. Sleep on it. But remember, I know where you live. I know where your mom sleeps. And I'm the only friend you've got in this town who's offering you a way out. Footsteps retreated. Car doors opened. An engine turned over, idled, then pulled away. You okay? Chains asked. He threatened my mom. Jake's voice was barely a whisper. He used her name. He knew about the pills. I heard every word. You did exactly right. Keep the door locked. Keep the phone on. I'll be outside your trailer in 20 minutes, and I'm staying until morning. You don't have to. Jake, I'm staying. The line stayed open. Jake sat on the floor with the phone against his ear and listened to his mother's breathing and the distant sound of Chain's engine approaching through the dark. Deborah's voice came from the couch, small and fierce. Who was that man? The sheriff. I know it was the sheriff. Who was on the phone? Jake closed his eyes. Someone who says we're not alone. Deborah was quiet for a long time. In this town, that's either the best news I've ever heard or the worst. Jake couldn't argue with that. He sat in the dark and held the phone and waited for morning like a man waiting for a verdict. By dawn, he found his answer in the driveway. His car, the rusted Civic that barely ran but ran enough, sat on 3 good tires and 1 slashed flat. Not a puncture, not a leak. A clean, deliberate cut through the sidewall. A message written in rubber and silence. Jake walked to the Route 12 diner, 3 miles in cold air, with a bruised jaw and no sleep, and a fury building in his chest that felt less like anger and more like clarity. Chains sat in the same booth by the window. Plain clothes, coffee untouched. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He looked at Jake the way you look at someone you've been watching over all night. Tire, Jake said, sitting down. I saw it. Happened around 4 a.m. Dark truck, no plates. I got partial video from across the street. Sheriff came to my house last night. Used my mom's name like he was reading from a list. I know. I recorded the audio through the phone. It's all ready with your lawyer. The bell above the door jingled. A woman walked in with the kind of stride that said she'd never once entered a room she didn't own within 30 seconds. Mid-30s, blonde hair pulled tight, eyes like scalpels. Her coat was still on. She wasn't staying long enough to get comfortable. Megan Steele sat down across from Jake and didn't waste a breath on small talk. I've heard the recording from last night. The sheriff used your mother's medical condition as leverage during an unauthorized visit to a minor's residence after 10 p.m. That alone is enough to trigger a state review. She opened a folder. But I don't want enough. I want everything. Tell me about yesterday from the moment you saw Savannah Cross. Jake told her. All of it. The hallway, the punch, the apology form, Harding's phone call, Jennings pulling his shifts, the missing medication, Connor's comment about his mother loving the dark. Megan wrote without looking up. Her pen moved in sharp, precise strokes. The school will try to frame this as mutual conflict. The sheriff will back that version. The mayor will make phone calls. If you sign anything admitting fault, you hand them the narrative. I didn't sign. Good. Now we replace their fear with our paperwork. She laid out the plan with the precision of someone building a case the way engineers build bridges. Every piece bearing weight, every connection load tested. Formal complaint to the State Education Oversight Board. Documentation of workplace interference. Insurance manipulation flagged with the State Health Department. The sheriff's nighttime visit filed with Internal Affairs and the State Attorney General's office. The local system is compromised, Megan said. So we don't play in the local system. We go above it. Every filing goes to Austin. Every complaint bypasses Ironfield County. They built their power on the assumption that nobody would ever look over the fence. We're tearing the fence down. Jake looked at Chains, then back at Megan. This is because of Savannah. Megan's eyes held his without blinking. This is because you were assaulted and then systematically targeted by the people who were supposed to protect you. That's enough.
That would be enough if Savannah Cross didn't exist.
The Bullies' parents are powerful. Power doesn't like daylight, Jake. That's why they deleted the footage. That's why the sheriff came at night. That's why they took your mother's pills instead of confronting you face to face. Every move they've made has been in the dark. Our job is to turn on the lights. The diner door opened again. Savannah walked in fast, backpack on one shoulder, face tight with something between anger and guilt. She stopped short when she saw Jake in daylight. The bruises darker, the swelling worse, the exhaustion carved under his eyes. "They did that because of me," she said. "No." Jake's voice was immediate, no hesitation. "They did it because they could. They've been doing it to people like me long before you got here." Savannah stared at him. That answer mattered to her in a way she couldn't articulate, and Jake couldn't have guessed.
My dad knows everything,
Savannah said, sliding into the booth. Megan cut in, firm but not unkind. "We're keeping family affiliations out of the formal record, unless they become directly relevant. This case stands on its own facts." Savannah nodded, then leaned toward Jake. "Brady's dad is telling everyone you attacked his son. He called 3 school board members last night. They're building a version where you started it and I provoked it." Megan's pen stopped. "Good. Let them build it. Stories collapse when they hit evidence, and right now they think they've destroyed all the evidence." She looked at Chains. "They think wrong." Chains' phone buzzed. He read the message, and his expression didn't change, but his posture did. The way a hunting dog goes still when it catches a scent. "Prez says Dutch pulled fragments off the school's recording server. The footage was deleted, but not overwritten. He's got the assault. Clear angle, timestamp."
Megan allowed herself one small, sharp smile. "They deleted footage after an assault report was filed. That's not a technical glitch. That's obstruction. And it's traceable." Jake felt something shift in his chest. Not hope. Hope was too generous a word for what he'd been living. But the crushing weight that had been sitting on his ribs since yesterday morning lifted 1 degree. Then the diner door banged open, and Brady Lawson walked in like he owned the building and everything breathing inside it. Connor Webb behind him. No Kyle. Kyle had apparently found his limit. Brady's eyes found Jake, and his smirk spread like an oil slick. "Hey, trailer boy. Heard you had a rough night. Ready to apologize yet?" Megan was on her feet before Jake could breathe. "Say one more word to my client, and you will explain it under oath." Brady's smirk flickered. He wasn't used to women who didn't step back. "Who are you?" "The woman who's going to make the next 6 months of your life very educational." "Walk away." Brady laughed, but the sound was thinner than yesterday. He leaned past Megan toward Savannah. "Tell your daddy we're not scared." Savannah's face went arctic. He already knows. Connor grabbed Brady's arm. "Let's go, man." Something in Connor's voice had changed. Not fear, exactly, but the first cousin of fear. The awareness that the ground beneath him might not be as solid as he thought. Brady shook him off, pointed at Jake, and mouthed, "Soon," before shoving through the door. Through the window, Jake watched Brady's truck peel out of the lot. Behind it, slow and deliberate, a county sheriff's sedan pulled away from the curb and followed at a distance that wasn't distance at all. Megan sat back down and made a note in her folder. "They're panicking.
People who aren't scared don't show up at diners to threaten teenagers.
Savannah's hand was flat on the table, pressing hard enough to whiten her knuckles. They're going to do something worse. I can feel it. Megan looked at her. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Because the worse they act, the deeper they dig. And I promise you, I will hand them the shovel every single time. Megan Steele walked into Ironfield High the next morning, like she was serving a warrant on the entire building. Jake flanked her left. Savannah flanked her right. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The energy rolling off the three of them hit the front office like a freight train wrapped in paperwork. The receptionist behind the counter looked up, saw Megan's face, and immediately picked up the phone. "Principal Sellers, you have visitors." "We're not visitors," Megan said. "We're here for the incident report from 2 days ago. The hallway surveillance footage from cameras 3 and 7, and written statements from every staff member on duty during second period transition. You have 5 minutes before I contact the state superintendent's office and request it through them." The receptionist's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Principal Sellers emerged from his office with the expression of a man who'd been warned this was coming, but had prayed it wouldn't. He was tall, thin, built like a man who'd spent 30 years avoiding confrontation and had gotten very good at it. "Ms. Steele, I'm sure we can—" "5 minutes, Principal Sellers. The incident report. There's been a— The report is still being finalized. 2 days later, still being finalized. These things take time. An assault takes seconds. Documentation should take less. The footage?" Sellers' eyes darted to Harding, who had materialized in the hallway, like a ghost who'd been summoned against his will. Harding's face was gray. He hadn't slept. Jake could see that from across the room. "The surveillance system experienced a technical malfunction," Sellers said. "On the exact morning a student was assaulted in your hallway." Megan opened her folder and placed a single sheet of paper on the counter. "This is a formal preservation demand. Under State Education Code, you are now legally required to retain all electronic records related to this incident. If any footage has been deleted after this demand, that's spoliation of evidence. That's not a school board problem, Principal Sellers. That's a criminal problem." Sellers read the document. His hands were steady, but his jaw was not. "I'll need to consult with our legal counsel." "You do that. And while you're consulting, I'll be filing the same demand with the district's IT department, the server hosting company, and the state education agency. The footage either exists or someone destroyed it. Either answer works for me." Jake watched Sellers' face and saw something he recognized. The same look Harding had worn in that office 2 days ago. The look of a man caught between the people above him and the truth below him, trying desperately to find a crack he could squeeze through without getting crushed. There was no crack. Megan had sealed every one. Then the hallway shifted. Jake felt it before he saw it. A change in pressure, a thickening of the air. Sheriff Tate walked through the front doors with his hat in his hand and a smile on his face that could have sold used cars or caskets with equal success. "Well now," Tate said, voice warm as Sunday gravy. "Looks like we've got a full house this morning." Megan turned. Her expression didn't change by a single degree. "Sheriff Tate, interesting timing." "I like to check in on our schools, community policing." He looked at Jake, and his smile deepened. "Jake, son, how's your mom doing? I stopped by last night to check on you two, but you must have been asleep." Jake's hands curled into fists at his sides. Every word out of Tate's mouth was a performance. Smooth, practiced, designed to sound caring while communicating threat. And standing in this hallway, surrounded by the same system that had been squeezing him for 2 days, Jake felt the fury rise up from somewhere deep and primal. "You came to my house at 11 at night," Jake said. "Apology, or you'd come back with apology, or you'd come back with paperwork." The hallway went silent. 2 teachers who'd been walking past stopped mid-step. The receptionist's hand froze on her phone.
Sellers looked like he wanted the floor to open and swallow him. Tate's smile didn't waver. "That's quite an imagination, son." "It's not imagination. It's recorded." The smile cracked. Just a millimeter. Just enough for Jake to see the real face underneath. The face of a man who had never, not once, expected the trailer park kid to fight back. Megan stepped between them. "Any further contact with my client or his mother constitutes witness intimidation. That's a state felony, Sheriff. Walk away." Tate looked at Megan for a long, measured beat. "You're from Austin, aren't you?" "I'm from wherever my clients need me to be." "Big city lawyers in my little town." He shook his head like he felt sorry for everyone involved. "This is a school discipline matter, Miss Steele. There's no need to make it federal." "Nobody said federal. I said state. But keep talking and I'll consider the upgrade." Tate put his hat back on. He looked at Jake one more time, a look that said, "This isn't over," and walked out. But Jake noticed that his stride was different, shorter, tighter. The walk of a man who'd just discovered the ground under his boots wasn't as solid as he'd believed. Through the office window, Jake saw a tow truck hooking Megan's car in the parking lot. Megan saw it too. Her jaw tightened. "Expired registration," the tow operator said when she confronted him. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "County order." "My registration is current. I renewed it last month." "Ma'am, I just go where they tell me." Megan pulled out her phone, photographed the truck, the operator, the county sticker on his door, and the valid registration on her windshield. "Unhook my car, or I'll have a judge on the phone in 4 minutes, and you personally named in an obstruction filing." The operator looked at his phone, looked at Megan, looked at the school where Tate's cruiser was pulling away. Then he unhooked the car without another word. Savannah stood beside Jake, watching. "They're going to keep doing this," she said quietly. "Little things, 100 little things, until we can't move." "That's exactly right," Megan said, still photographing. "And every little thing they do is another line in my filing. They think they're squeezing us. They're building my case." But Jake could see the cost in Megan's eyes. The tow truck wasn't just harassment. It was a message. "We know your car. We know where you park. We can reach you anytime we want." Ironfield wasn't just fighting back. It was reminding everyone that the machine had been running long before they arrived, and the machine didn't lose. That afternoon, Jake went back to school because Megan told him to. "You go. You sit in class. You don't engage. You let them see you, and you give them nothing." Savannah walked with him. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. There's a kind of bond that forms between people who've been targeted by the same system. Not friendship exactly. Something more like mutual recognition. Two people standing in the same fire, choosing not to run. The hallways felt different. The whispers had a new flavor. Kids who'd pretended not to see Brady's fists 2 days ago now pretended not to see Jake's bruises. Same cowardice, different direction. Then, just before 6th period, Jake heard voices behind the gymnasium. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was cutting through the back hall to avoid the main corridor where Brady's friends still traveled in packs. But sound carries in empty hallways, and the voices coming through the propped-open fire door were loud enough to freeze him mid-step. "Brady, Connor, Kyle." "Old boathouse by the river," Brady was saying. His voice had a new edge, not the lazy cruelty of the hallway, something sharper, something planned. "Deputy Nolan's got the road blocked. No cars, no lights, no problems." Connor's voice. "What about the kid?" "Morrison? We bait him. Send a text. Make him think she's in trouble. Hero complex. He'll come running." Kyle, nervous. "Brady, this is different. This isn't school. This is—" "Shut up, Kyle. You're either in or you're out." Silence. Then Kyle's voice, smaller. "I'm in." "Good. Zip ties. We grab her, hold her for 2 minutes, take a picture, send it to her father. Let him know his daughter isn't untouchable. Jake's blood went to ice. Not cold. Ice. Solid, crystallized, incapable of flowing. His heart hammered, but his body didn't move. His brain was running calculations at a speed he didn't know it possessed. They were going to grab Savannah. Tonight. At the river. With a deputy blocking the road. This wasn't a schoolyard fight. This was a coordinated abduction planned by 3 teenagers and backed by a corrupt officer of the law. Jake moved away from the door on silent feet. He walked to the bathroom, locked himself in a stall, and called Megan's number with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. She picked up on the first ring. Jake, they're going after Savannah. Tonight. The old boathouse by the river. Brady, Connor, Kyle. They've got zip ties. Deputy Nolan is blocking the road. They're going to grab her, take a picture, and send it to her dad. Megan was silent for exactly 2 seconds. When she spoke, her voice was different, stripped of the legal polish, down to bare metal. Tell me exactly what you heard, word for word. Jake repeated it, every sentence. Brady's plan, Connor's question, Kyle's hesitation, the zip ties, the deputy. Stay inside the school, Megan said. Do not tip them off. Do not look at them differently. Do not tell Savannah yet. I need to make calls first. And I need Brady to believe his plan is still intact. They're going to hurt her. No, they're not. Because they just told their entire plan to the one person in Ironfield who was willing to stand in front of her. I'm making calls. Stay where you are. Jake hung up. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. Bruised jaw, dark circles under his eyes. 17 years old. $17 to his name. Fighting a mayor, a sheriff, and 3 seniors who were planning something that could put a girl in the hospital, or worse. His reflection stared back at him. It didn't look scared. It looked furious. He went back to class. He sat through American history and didn't hear a single word about the Civil War. He sat through pre-calculus and didn't solve a single equation. He watched Brady across the cafeteria, laughing with Connor, performing normalcy. And Jake marveled at how easy it was for some people to plan something monstrous and then eat a sandwich. At 4:15, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. If you want to be a hero again, come watch. A GPS pin dropped to Old River Road. They'd baited him, exactly like Brady said they would. Hero complex. He'll come running. Jake called Megan. Voicemail. Called again. Voicemail. Called the prepaid number for chains. 3 rings. 4. Yeah? They sent me a pin. Old River Road. They're baiting me. I know. Megan called Prez an hour ago. We're already moving. Stay home. Chains. What if Savannah got the same kind of message? What if they baited her too? Dead silence on the line. Jake called Savannah. Her phone rang 6 times and went to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. His chest caved in. She was already gone. Jake ran. He didn't think about the plan. He didn't think about Megan's instructions, or Chain's orders, or the fact that he was 17 and broke and walking into a trap set by people who had a deputy blocking the road. He thought about Savannah's face in the hallway, chin up, voice thin but unbroken, and he ran. Old River Road was dark. No streetlights, no houses, just gravel under his feet and trees pressing in from both sides, and the sound of the river somewhere ahead, moving the way rivers move, indifferent to everything happening on their banks. He saw the boathouse, sagging roof, rotted wood. A flashlight beam moved inside. Then he heard her voice. "Get off me!" Savannah, not screaming, fighting. The sound of someone who refused to be a victim, even with zip ties coming out of a backpack. Jake burst through the door. Brady had Savannah's arm twisted behind her back. Connor was pulling zip ties from a duffel bag. Kyle stood in the corner, pale as paper, hands shaking so badly the flashlight beam jerked across the walls. Jake hit Connor low and hard, driving his shoulder into Connor's gut. They went down together. The duffel spilled. Zip ties scattered like plastic bones across the wooden floor. Savannah twisted free from Brady's grip and stumbled backward. Jake scrambled to his feet and grabbed Savannah's phone from where it had fallen. He hit record. The screen lit up their faces. Brady's shock, Connor's rage, Kyle's absolute terror. "Smile," Jake rasped, holding the camera on their faces. "It's all on video." Brady lunged for the phone. Jake dodged, backing toward the door, keeping the camera steady. His ribs screamed from where Connor had landed on him. Blood from his reopened lip ran down his chin. "Give me that phone, Morrison," Brady snarled. "Come take it. Do it on camera. Show everybody who you really are." Brady stopped. For the first time since Jake had known him, Brady Lawson hesitated. The camera changed the math. The camera meant witnesses that couldn't be silenced. Connor got to his feet. "Grab him." "And do what?" Jake shouted, loud enough to echo off the water. "Beat me up again? On video? With zip ties on the floor? What's your dad going to say about that, Brady? What's the sheriff going to do when this hits the state police?" Kyle broke. "I'm done. I'm out." He dropped the flashlight and bolted through the back door so fast his sneakers slipped on the wet wood. Brady's face twisted. The mask was gone. No smirk, no charm. Just a boy who'd been told his whole life that he was untouchable, staring into a phone camera that was proving him wrong. Then, the sound that changed everything. A low rumble from the far end of Old River Road. Not loud, controlled, like thunder that knew exactly where it was going. Engines. 2 vehicles, headlights sweeping through the trees in wide, deliberate arcs. The vehicle stopped at the road's only exit, blocking it completely. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Plain clothes, no patches, no leather. Just steady hands and phones held up, cameras recording. Behind them, red and blue lights. Not county. State. State patrol cruisers coming fast, sirens cutting through the night like judgment itself. Brady's face went white. Actually white. The blood drained so fast, Jake thought for a second he might faint. "Hands where I can see them!" A state trooper's voice, amplified, absolute. Brady didn't let go of Savannah's arm. His fingers dug in tighter, reflexive, the grip of a boy who'd never been told to stop and couldn't process the command. Savannah stomped his instep. Hard. Brady's grip broke. She twisted free, stumbled behind a trooper, and stood there breathing like she'd been underwater for 10 minutes. Connor tried to run. A trooper caught him before he made it 6 steps. "On the ground. Now." Kyle was found 200 yards down the riverbank, sitting in the mud, crying. He didn't resist. He didn't even look up. 3 sets of handcuffs, 3 faces in trooper spotlights. Brady's mouth kept opening and closing, but nothing came out. For the first time in his life, no one was going to fix this for him. Deputy Nolan was still sitting in his SUV at the roadblock when the troopers reached him. No dispatch log, no work order, no legal authorization to close a public road. He couldn't explain why he was there. He couldn't explain the radio silence. He couldn't explain anything because there was nothing to explain that didn't end with handcuffs. Inside the duffel bag at the boathouse, a state trooper found zip ties, duct tape, a cheap prepaid phone, and a printed copy of Savannah's school ID photo. Professional quality. Laminated. The trooper held it up. "This isn't a prank." Megan Steele's voice came from behind Jake, steady and devastating.
"That's intent."
The sergeant nodded. "Yes, ma'am, it is." Jake turned. Megan stood at the edge of the clearing with chains beside her. She looked at Jake, and her professional mask slipped for 1 second, just long enough for him to see the raw fury underneath. "I told you to stay home," she said. She wasn't answering her phone. Megan closed her eyes, opened them. "We'll discuss your self-preservation instincts later." Savannah was wrapped in a trooper's jacket, sitting on the tailgate of a patrol vehicle. She wasn't crying. Her eyes were dry and hard and ancient in a way that 17-year-old eyes should never be. Jake sat beside her, not close, just present. "You came," she said. "You weren't answering." "They spoofed a text, made it look like you were hurt, that you were here." "They sent me one too, said to come watch." Savannah's laugh was short and bitter and had no humor in it at all. "So they baited us both, and we both came. How stupid are we?" "Pretty stupid," Jake said. She looked at him. Something moved behind her eyes. Gratitude, anger, fear, and something else he couldn't name and wasn't ready to. "Thank you," she whispered. Again. "Stop getting cornered," Jake whispered back. "I'm running out of faces to get hit in." She almost smiled. Almost. But the night wasn't done bleeding. While Jake was at the river, someone had broken into his trailer. A county vehicle had been spotted circling the park by a neighbor who was too scared to call the police because the police were the ones circling. They stole Deborah's medication. Again. And this time, they left something behind. A plastic baggie of white powder shoved under the kitchen sink. A frame job so crude it was almost insulting. Almost. Except that crude frame jobs worked in towns where the sheriff was the one doing the framing. State troopers chased the fleeing vehicle 3 miles before it was abandoned on a dirt road. Registration came back to the Ironfield Sheriff's Office motor pool. The keys were still in the ignition. When they searched Jake's trailer with his consent, they found everything. The planted drugs, the forced entry tool marks on the back window, the empty space where Deborah's medication should have been. Every piece of it documented, every piece of it photographed, every piece of it pointing back to the one office in Ironfield that was supposed to protect people like Deborah Morrison. EMS arrived because Deborah's heart was racing, and her medication was gone, and her body had decided that enough was enough. Jake held his mother in the gravel outside their trailer, while paramedics checked her vitals, and a state trooper took photographs of the damage inside. "Someone was inside," Deborah whispered. Her voice was so small, Jake had to press his ear to her mouth. "They were quiet. I thought it was you coming home." Jake held her tighter. His jaw hurt. His ribs hurt. His heart hurt in a way that no medication could fix and no system could address. Savannah stood 10 feet away, arms wrapped around herself, watching Jake hold his mother. When she spoke, her voice was made of ice and iron. "They broke into a sick woman's home and stole her heart medication, while her son was being lured into a trap." Megan's jaw was clenched so tight, the muscle jumped visibly. "That's not harassment. That's not intimidation." She looked at the state sergeant. "That's coercion. That's conspiracy. And the vehicle that fled this trailer park is registered to Sheriff Tate's department." The sergeant nodded slowly. "We've secured the vehicle. We're obtaining warrants tonight." Jake looked up from his mother's trembling body. His eyes found Megan, then Chains, then Savannah, then the troopers, Then the broken window of his trailer, where someone had crawled through to steal a dying woman's pills and frame her son. And something inside Jake Morrison that had been bending for 2 days finally stopped bending. It didn't break. It hardened. It became something that Ironfield hadn't seen in a long time. A kid who was no longer afraid because they had already taken everything he had left to lose. Sheriff Tate's black SUV pulled into the trailer park at 1:47 a.m., like a man arriving to claim what was his. He stepped out wearing his full uniform, pressed, polished, badge catching the red and blue lights of the state patrol vehicles that were already there. His face was locked in an expression of public outrage so rehearsed it could have been printed on a campaign poster. "What in God's name is happening here?" Tate's voice boomed across the gravel. "This is my county. I did not authorize state units in my jurisdiction." The state sergeant didn't flinch. He was a different breed from Tate. Taller, leaner, with a kind of stillness that comes from years of doing the job without needing to perform it. "Sergeant Rourke, Texas DPS. We responded to a report of coordinated assault and abduction involving minors. During that response, evidence led us here." "Evidence," Tate repeated, loading the word with contempt. "Evidence of what?" "Forced entry, theft of prescription medication from a disabled resident, planting of controlled substances. The vehicle used in the commission fled this location and is registered to your motor pool, Sheriff." Tate's jaw worked. "That's impossible. My vehicles are accounted for." "Then you won't mind if we verify," Rourke said. "We've secured the unit. Warrants are being drafted as we speak." Tate took a step forward, not toward Rourke, toward Jake. His boots crunched the gravel like he was grinding something under his heel. Deborah was in the ambulance now, oxygen mask on, paramedic monitoring her vitals. Jake stood between Tate and the ambulance like he'd been doing his entire life, standing between threats and the people he loved. "Jake." Tate's voice dropped low, intimate. The voice he used at the trailer door. The voice that knew your mother's name and your medication schedule and the exact pressure point to make a 17-year-old boy break. "You think these people are saving you? State troopers, big city lawyers, bikers." He glanced toward where Chains stood in shadow. "They'll file their paperwork and drive back to Austin, and you'll still be here. Still in that trailer. Still the kid who made a mess nobody asked him to make." Jake's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the effort of not swinging. Every cell in his body wanted to put his fist through Tate's rehearsed face, and every rational thought he had left told him that was exactly what Tate wanted. "My mother is in that ambulance," Jake said. His voice was barely controlled. "Because someone broke into our home and stole her heart medication. For the second time." "That's terrible," Tate said, and his face arranged itself into something resembling sympathy. "I'll personally look into—" "The vehicle was yours." Megan's voice cut through the night like a blade. She stepped forward with a folder that looked like it weighed more than it should. "Registered to your department, your motor pool, your keys." "Vehicles get stolen, Miss Steele." "From a locked sheriff's compound with 24-hour camera surveillance? How convenient." Tate's eyes narrowed. "You're making accusations that—" "I'm stating facts that your own records will confirm or deny. Either someone in your department drove that vehicle to this trailer park, broke in, stole a sick woman's medication, and planted narcotics to frame her son, or someone stole a vehicle from your secured compound without triggering a single alarm. Which story would you prefer to go with, Sheriff? Because I'll file whichever one you choose." Tate looked at Megan the way a dog looks at a fence it can't jump. Then he tried his last move. He stepped close to Jake, close enough that Jake could smell coffee and gun oil and something sour underneath, and dropped his voice to a whisper that was meant to sound like advice. "You're 17, Jake. In this state, that means you're almost an adult, almost old enough to be charged as one. And the friends you're keeping, the people behind you right now, they've got records longer than your arm. When this all shakes out, and it will, you're going to be standing alone in front of a judge explaining why you were at a boathouse at midnight with known criminal associates. Savannah's voice cracked through the dark. Big badges for small men. Tate turned slowly. His eyes found Savannah, and something ugly moved behind them. Recognition. Not of her father, of what she represented, of the one family in Ironfield that his badge couldn't bend. "You're your father's daughter," he said. It wasn't a compliment. It was an inventory, a measurement, a man calculating whether the girl in front of him was worth the war behind her. Savannah didn't blink. "And you're exactly what he said you'd be." Tate held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he turned, walked back to his SUV, and drove away without closing his door properly. It swung open and slammed shut when he hit the first bump. The sound echoed through the trailer park like a period at the end of a sentence nobody wanted to read. Sergeant Rourke watched the SUV disappear. "He's going to make calls." "Let him," Megan said. "Every call he makes tonight is a call we can subpoena tomorrow." Jake's legs gave out. Not dramatically, quietly. His knees just stopped working, and he sat down on the gravel beside the ambulance and put his head in his hands. The adrenaline that had been carrying him since the boathouse finally drained out and left behind something raw and hollow. Savannah sat down next to him, not touching, just present, the same way he'd sat next to her on that patrol vehicle tailgate, the same unspoken language. "Is your mom going to be okay?" she asked. "They're stabilizing her. Her heart rate was way up. They gave her something through the IV." His voice cracked on the last word, and he pressed his palms against his eyes to keep everything inside. "Jake." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Nobody's fine. Stop saying that." He dropped his hands. His eyes were red. "What am I supposed to say? My mom's in the back of an ambulance because I didn't sign a piece of paper. Because I stood in front of a girl I didn't know and told 3 guys in Letterman jackets to walk away. That's all I did. That's all I did, and now they're trying to put my mother in the ground." Savannah's throat tightened. "You didn't cause this." "I know I didn't cause it, but she's paying for it." "So is the system that did this to her. Megan's got them. The state's got them. This isn't going away." Jake stared at the ambulance doors. Through the small window, he could see his mother's face. Oxygen mask, closed eyes, the paramedic's hand adjusting something he couldn't identify. She looked so small. She'd always been small, but tonight she looked like something that could disappear if he blinked too long. "I need to ride with her," he said. "Go. I'll be here when you get back." Jake climbed into the ambulance and took his mother's hand. Deborah's eyes opened, glassy, confused, frightened. Her fingers curled around his with the desperate strength of someone reaching for the only solid thing left. "Baby," she whispered through the mask. "I'm here, Mom. Don't talk. Just breathe." "Did they catch them?" "Yeah, Mom. They caught them." "The boys?" "All 3. And the deputy." Deborah's eyes closed. A tear tracked down her temple into her hair. "I'm sorry, Jake." Don't you dare apologize." "I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast." The ambulance doors closed. The siren didn't turn on, because Deborah was stable enough to travel without it. And somehow, that silence felt louder than any siren Jake had ever heard. While Jake rode to the hospital, Ironfield's machine was grinding its gears for the last time. Chains made one phone call to Dominic Cross at 2:15 a.m. President Tate showed up at the trailer park, tried to intimidate the kid in front of state troopers. He's desperate. Dominic's voice was granite. What about the footage? Dutch pulled it. Fragments from the school's recording server. The deletion was logged, but the overwrite didn't complete. He's got 37 seconds of Brady Lawson hitting Jake Morrison in the hallway. Clear angle, timestamp. The access log shows someone remotely deleted the file 90 minutes after Megan served the preservation demand. The remote login came from an IP address registered to the Ironfield Municipal Building. Mayor's office. Mayor's office. Dominic was quiet for a moment. Send it to Megan. Send copies to the State Education Agency and the Attorney General. And Chains, make sure the kid's mother is taken care of tonight.
Whatever the hospital doesn't cover, we cover. Already done, Prez. How's the boy? Chains paused. He ran into a boathouse full of guys with zip ties because Savannah wasn't answering her phone. He's either the bravest kid in Texas or the dumbest. I haven't decided. Something that might have been a laugh came through the phone. Yeah, I know the type. State investigators moved fast once the warrants cleared. By 4 a.m., a team entered the Ironfield Sheriff's Department and began pulling dispatch records, vehicle logs, surveillance footage from the motor pool, and communication records between Tate's office and the mayor's office. They found what Megan already knew they'd find, a pattern so blatant it was almost an insult to the concept of cover-ups. Phone calls between Tate and Mayor Lawson, averaging 4 times daily for the past week. A vehicle checkout log that had been altered. Whiteout on paper, actual whiteout in the year 2024, as if digital records didn't exist. A text from Deputy Nolan to Sheriff Tate at 6:47 p.m. the previous evening that read, "River Road blocked. Ready when you are." Nolan was arrested at 5 a.m. He cried in the back of the state patrol car. Not from remorse, from the sudden understanding that the man he'd been taking orders from couldn't protect him anymore. By 6 a.m., the warrants extended to Mayor Lawson's office. When investigators arrived at the municipal building, the mayor's assistant was already there, at 6 in the morning, feeding documents into a shredder. She stopped when she saw the badges. The shredder kept running. A state trooper pulled the plug from the wall. The half-shredded documents included internal memos referencing the Morrison situation and containment strategy for cross-related issues. Containment strategy. For a 17-year-old boy who'd stepped in front of a girl he didn't know. Mayor Lawson arrived at his own office at 7:30 to find it sealed with state crime tape. He stood on the sidewalk in his suit and tie, and for the first time in anyone's memory, the mayor of Ironfield had nothing to say. His mouth opened. It closed. His hands adjusted his tie. His phone rang. He stared at the caller ID. It was Tate. And for the first time, he didn't answer. Brady Lawson didn't come to school that morning. Neither did Connor Webb. Neither did Kyle Dunn. Their lockers sat unopened. Their seats sat empty. Teachers who had looked away while those boys terrorized the hallways now stood at the front of their classrooms and taught to the silence like it was the first honest thing they'd heard all year. The school board called an emergency session at noon. Vice Principal Harding was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. He walked out of the building carrying a single box and couldn't look at anyone. But before he left, he did one thing nobody expected. He walked to Jake Morrison's locker, where Jake was pulling out a textbook, and stopped. Jake tensed. Every encounter with this man had been a trap. "I should have done something," Harding said. His voice was barely audible. "In that office, when Tate called, when I tried to make you sign,
I knew what was happening, and I chose my job over your safety." Jake stared at him. He wanted to be angry. The anger was right there, hot and ready. But something in Harding's face stopped him. A genuine devastation that went beyond career loss. This was a man who had just realized he'd traded his integrity for a paycheck, and the paycheck had bounced. "You could have said something," Jake said quietly. "I know. You could have picked up the phone and called anyone who wasn't Tate." "I know. She could have been killed last night, at that boathouse, with zip ties and duct tape and her school photo laminated in a bag. That could have ended differently. You know that, right?" Harding's face crumbled. Not the controlled collapse of a man performing regret. The ugly, genuine breakdown of someone who'd just been handed the full weight of what his cowardice had almost allowed. "I'm cooperating," he said. "With the state. With Megan Steele. Everything I know." "That doesn't fix it." "No, it doesn't." Harding walked away. Jake watched him go and felt something he didn't expect. Not forgiveness, not satisfaction, but something like exhaustion. The exhaustion of realizing that the adults who were supposed to protect him had always been more afraid than he was. Megan called Jake that afternoon with news that hit like a thunderclap. Dutch had delivered the recovered footage to the state education agency. 37 seconds of Brady Lawson punching Jake Morrison in the face. Clear as daylight. But it was the metadata that sealed it. The deletion log showed the footage was erased at 11:23 a.m., exactly 92 minutes after Megan hand-delivered the preservation demand to Principal Seller's office. And the deletion was executed remotely from an IP address inside the municipal building. "That's not just destruction of evidence," Megan said. "That's spoliation after a legal hold. The school, the principal, and whoever logged in from the mayor's office are all now parties to obstruction." "What does that mean?" "It means the cage they built around you just locked them inside." 2 weeks. That's how long it took. 2 weeks of state investigators combing through Ironfield's power structure, like surgeons removing a tumor. Sheriff Tate was formally charged with official misconduct, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, coercion, and conspiracy to commit false imprisonment of a minor. The charges were read in a courtroom 2 counties over, because nobody trusted Ironfield's courts anymore. Tate stood at the defendant's table in a suit instead of a uniform, and looked like a man wearing someone else's skin. When the judge read the charges, his face didn't change, but his hands shook. The same hands that had knocked on Jake's trailer door at midnight. The same hands that had held a badge like a weapon. Those hands couldn't hold still anymore. Mayor Lawson was charged separately. Conspiracy, obstruction, abuse of office, interference with emergency medical services. That one was for Deborah's medication. When the charge was read aloud, Jake felt it like a physical blow. Not because it was painful. This judgment left days after the charges. No forwarding. Days after the charges. No forwarding address. No goodbye. Just a for sale sign on a house that had been in the family for 2 generations, and a truck driving south at 4 in the morning. Kyle Dunn broke. Not slowly. Not gracefully. He walked into Principal Seller's office on a Tuesday morning and sat down and started crying and couldn't stop. He told them everything. The plan, the texts, the zip ties. Brady's voice laying it out like a homework assignment. Deputy Nolan nodding along. The picture they were going to take. The message they were going to send. He told them about the other things too. The things nobody had asked about yet. Other kids Brady had cornered. Other parents who'd been squeezed. Other incidents that had been erased, apologized away, buried under a system that protected its own. Kyle's confession ran 37 pages. By the time he finished, the school counselor was in tears, and the state investigator had stopped writing because the recorder was doing the work. Gloria Vance, the janitor who'd witnessed the original assault and signed that first statement in the cold parking lot, was called to testify before the State Oversight Board. She walked into the hearing room in her work uniform because she didn't own anything formal, and she sat down and told the truth with the kind of quiet courage that makes buildings shake. "I saw those boys corner that girl," she said. "I saw them hit that boy. I saw a teacher walk past and pretend it wasn't happening. And I was afraid to say something because I've got 2 kids, and this job is the only thing keeping us fed. But that boy, Jake, he stood there and took it. And if a 17-year-old can do that, I figured the least I could do was open my mouth." The hearing room was silent. Gloria's hands were folded in her lap. She wasn't performing bravery, she was just telling the truth. And in Ironfield, that was the bravest thing anyone had done in years. Dominic Cross watched the developments from a distance. He didn't attend hearings. He didn't make public statements. He didn't ride through town with his brothers or make any gesture that could be photographed and misinterpreted. But Chains reported to him every night, and every night Dominic asked the same question. "How's the boy?" "Tired, angry, holding it together for his mom. Kid's got more spine than most men I know." "And Savannah?" "She's solid, goes to school, keeps her head up, walks with Jake between classes like a bodyguard who doesn't know she's doing it." Dominic was quiet. "She tell you that?" "No, Prez. I've got eyes." "Keep them open. This isn't over until sentencing." "You want to meet the kid?" Another silence. Longer this time. "Yeah, but not yet. Let the dust settle. Let him breathe. He's earned that." Chains understood. Dominic Cross was many things. Hard, calculating, capable of violence that most men only read about. But he knew what Jake Morrison didn't know yet. He knew that the hardest part wasn't the fight. The hardest part was the morning after, when the adrenaline was gone and the bruises were fading, and you had to figure out who you were now that the war was over. That night, Jake sat in the hospital room where his mother was sleeping. Her vitals had stabilized. The new medication, provided through channels Megan had established with the state health department, was working. Her color was better. Her breathing was easier. She looked, for the first time in weeks, like a woman who might actually wake up and stay. Jake held her hand and stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of everything that had happened since he'd stepped in front of a girl he didn't know in a hallway he wished he'd never walked through. His phone buzzed. Savannah. "You awake?" "Yeah." "How's your mom?" "Better. Sleeping." "Good." A pause. 3 dots appeared and disappeared twice. Then, "My dad wants to meet you." Jake's chest tightened. "I'm not joining anything." "He doesn't want you to join anything. He wants to look you in the eye and say, 'Thank you.' Is that allowed?" Jake stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. He thought about the pharmacy bag on his porch, the prepaid phone, Megan Steele, the state troopers who arrived at the river because someone made the right call to the right people at the right time. He thought about his mother breathing easy for the first time in days. "Yeah," he typed. "That's allowed." He put the phone down and held his mother's hand and listened to the steady beep of her heart monitor, and realized that the sound was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. Not because it was music, but because it meant she was still here. They were both still here. And for the first time since Brady Lawson's fist cracked his jaw in that hallway, Jake Morrison believed they might actually stay. Deborah Morrison came home on a Thursday morning. The discharge papers were signed, the medication was stable, and the doctor, a state-referred cardiologist who owed nothing to Ironfield's power structure, told Jake that his mother's heart was damaged, but holding. She needs rest, the doctor said. She needs consistency, and she needs to stop being terrorized. Jake didn't answer that last part. He just took his mother's arm and walked her to the car that Chains had left parked outside the hospital, with the keys under the mat and a full tank of gas, and a note on the dashboard that said nothing except an address and a time. Deborah was quiet during the drive. She watched the road through the passenger window, and Jake could see her processing, the way she always processed, slowly, carefully, turning each piece of information over like a stone she was checking for scorpions underneath. "Who's paying for this?" she asked. "The State Victims Assistance Fund covered the hospital," Jake said. It was partially true. "And the rest?" "Mom." "Jake, I've been sick. I haven't been stupid." He gripped the steering wheel. His mother had survived a broken husband, a broken heart, literally, and a town that had tried to use her as a weapon against her own son. She deserved the truth. "Savannah's father," Jake said. "The medication. Some of the legal costs. Chains. The guy who brought the pills that first night. He's been covering things I didn't even know needed covering." Deborah's jaw tightened. "And what does he want?" "That's the thing, Mom. He hasn't asked for anything." "People always want something." "I know. I keep waiting for it. But Megan says the legal fund is clean. No strings, no obligations. I checked." "You checked with the lawyer. Did you check with yourself?" Jake looked at his mother. She looked back at him with the same eyes that had seen through every lie he'd ever told and every truth he'd tried to hide. "I don't know what I think yet," he said honestly. "But I know we'd be dead without them. You and me both." Deborah was quiet for a long time. "Then I'd like to say thank you to somebody. That's how I raised you, and that's what I'd expect of myself." Jake pulled into the trailer park. Their trailer looked the same, battered, leaning slightly, held together by stubbornness and duct tape. But the back window had been replaced. New glass, clean frame. The porch steps, which had been rotting for 2 years, were new wood, fresh screws catching the light. Deborah stared. "Who did this?" "I don't know, Mom. I really don't." But he did know. He'd just never been told directly, because that was how they operated. Not with announcements, not with invoices. Just with the quiet work of people who understood that dignity meant not making someone say thank you. Jake helped his mother inside. The kitchen had been cleaned. The cabinets were stocked. Not lavishly, not like a charity basket, but the way a neighbor stocks a kitchen. Practical things. Rice, beans, bread. Her medication was on the counter in a new organizer, with each day labeled. Deborah stood in her kitchen and pressed her hand against her mouth and didn't make a sound. Her shoulders shook once, twice. Then she straightened up, poured herself a glass of water, took her medication, and sat down at the table. "Okay," she said. "Tell me everything." So Jake told her. All of it. From the hallway to the boathouse, to the sheriff on the porch. Deborah listened without interrupting. Her face changed a dozen times. Fear, anger, pride, fury, grief. Something that looked like wonder. When he finished, she was quiet for a full minute. "You stood in front of a stranger," she said. "Yes." "And they beat you for it." "Yes." "And you didn't fold." "No, ma'am." Deborah reached across the table and took his hand. Her grip was weak from the hospital, but her eyes were iron. "Your father would have folded. That's why he left. Because folding is easier, and he chose easy every single time." Her voice cracked. "You are not your father, Jake.
You were never your father. Don't you ever let anyone in this town make you think otherwise." Jake's throat closed so tight he couldn't speak. He just held his mother's hand and nodded, and let the silence say what words couldn't. The next morning, Jake walked into Ironfield High and felt the absence like stepping out of a pressure chamber. No Brady leaning against lockers with his crown of entitlement. No Connor laughing too loud, taking up too much space, daring the world to push back. No Kyle hovering, nervous, obedient, complicit. Their lockers were empty. Their seats were empty. The hallways that had been their kingdom for 3 years now belonged to everyone else. And the difference was palpable. Not joy, not celebration, but a collective exhale. A school full of kids who'd been holding their breath for so long, they'd forgotten they were doing it. Gloria Vance was mopping the hallway near the gymnasium. When Jake passed, she stopped. She didn't say anything. She reached out and brushed her fingers against his arm. One quick touch, there and gone, and then went back to mopping. Jake felt that touch all the way to his bones. An adult who had been afraid. An adult who had spoken up anyway. An adult who still couldn't say it out loud, but needed him to know. He nodded at her. She nodded back. That was enough. Savannah found him at lunch. She sat across the table and put her tray down, and looked at him with eyes that were no longer the eyes of a scared girl pinned against a trophy case. They were harder now, older, the eyes of someone who had learned what the world was capable of and had decided to stay in it anyway. "How's your mom?" "Home, stable, mad at everyone." "Good, she should be." "She wants to meet your dad." Savannah's eyebrows lifted. "Your mom wants to meet the president of the Hells Angels?" "She wants to thank whoever fixed the porch steps." Savannah's face softened. "That was Chains. He brought 3 guys at 5 in the morning. They were gone before sunrise." "My mom noticed." "Your mom's sharp." "My mom's terrifying. That's different." Savannah almost laughed. The sound was short and surprised and real. The first genuine laughter Jake had heard from her since the day they met. It changed her face completely, made her look 17 instead of 40. "He's asking about you again," Savannah said. "Your dad?" "Every night. Chains gives him updates, and every night the last question is the same. How's the boy?" Jake stared at his untouched sandwich. "Why does he care?" "Because you did something he understands. You put yourself in front of someone who couldn't fight back, and you didn't ask what you'd get for it. In his world, that's the only currency that matters. I'm not in his world. You're not in anyone's world, Jake. That's kind of the point." After school, Savannah drove Jake to the address Chains had left on the dashboard note. A mechanic's shop on the edge of the county line, clean, well-lit, operating under state registration instead of Ironfield's jurisdiction. Outside the mayor's reach, outside the sheriff's shadow. A different country entirely. Dominic Cross was waiting. No leather, no patches, no entourage. Just a tall man in a work shirt with silver-streaked hair and hands that were clean but scarred, standing next to a truck with a hood up and a wrench on the bumper. He looked at Jake the way Jake had seen very few people look at anything, with the kind of attention that doesn't evaluate or judge, but simply sees. Everything. All of it. The bruises that were finally fading, the exhaustion that wasn't, the steel underneath both. "Jake Morrison," Dominic said. "Sir." Dominic's mouth twitched at the "sir." Not mockery, something closer to respect. "Savannah told me what happened. All of it. The hallway, the trailer, the river. I've heard it from Chains. I've heard it from Megan. But I wanted to hear what you hear when you think about it." Jake frowned. "What do you mean?" "When you close your eyes and you're back in that hallway,
What do you hear?" Jake was quiet for a long time. He didn't lie. He didn't perform. He just went back to that moment. The phones lifting, the lockers ringing, the teacher's shoes clicking past. "I hear the teacher walking away," Jake said. "That's the part I can't forget. Not Brady hitting me."
Not Savannah's voice, the teacher's shoes. Click, 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 slowing down, and then speeding up, like they decided in real time that I wasn't worth stopping for. Dominic nodded slowly. That sound, that exact sound, that's why I built what I built. Because the people who are supposed to stop don't, and somebody has to. I'm not joining your club. I know you're not. I can't owe you. You don't owe me a thing. Dominic pulled an envelope from his back pocket. Not thick, not flashy, just a plain white envelope. "This is a bridge, not a chain. Medical support for your mom. A real cardiologist in Austin. Transportation covered. No insurance games. And a paid apprenticeship here at this shop. Real work, real pay. Outside Ironfield's system. You learn a trade, you earn your own way, and nobody in that town gets to use your poverty as a leash ever again." Jake stared at the envelope. His hands stayed at his sides. Why? Because I watched a kid who had nothing risk everything for a girl he didn't know. And then I watched a town try to destroy him for it. I've been a lot of things in my life, Jake. Not all of them good. But I know what courage costs. And I know it shouldn't cost you your mother's life. And if there are strings? Dominic shook his head. One condition. You keep being who you are. That's it. That's the whole deal. Jake looked at the envelope. He looked at the shop. He looked at Savannah, who was leaning against the truck with her arms folded, watching him the way she'd watched him in that hallway, like she was seeing something that mattered. He took the envelope. His fingers shook. He wasn't ashamed of the shaking. Shaking was honest. Shaking meant the weight of the moment was real. "Thank you," Jake said, and he meant it in a way he'd never meant anything in his life. Dominic extended his hand, not for a gang shake, not for a secret grip, just a handshake, man to man. The kind of handshake that says, "I see you, and you're worth seeing." Jake took it. Savannah's eyes were bright, but she didn't cry. She was done crying over Ironfield. She was done giving this town her tears. That month, things changed. Not overnight, not like a movie. Ironfield changed the way real places change, slowly, reluctantly, dragged forward by the people who refused to let it stay where it was. Megan Steele drafted a youth safety program with state oversight built into its foundation. The school district had no choice but to accept it. Independent monitors, mandatory reporting protocols, camera systems that couldn't be remotely deleted by people in municipal buildings. Teacher accountability measures that meant walking past a fight was now a career-ending decision instead of a career-preserving one. Gloria Vance was offered the position of student safety coordinator. She turned it down twice. "I'm a janitor," she said. "I mop floors." Megan told her that the best person for the job was someone who had proven they'd tell the truth when it was hard. Gloria took the job on her third ask. She showed up in the same work uniform because she still didn't own anything formal. And she did the work better than anyone with a degree could have done it. Because Gloria Vance knew what it felt like to be afraid, and she would spend the rest of her career making sure the children in that building never had to feel it. Harding cooperated fully with the state investigation. His testimony filled gaps that turned suspicions into convictions. He never returned to education. Jake heard he moved to a small town in New Mexico and took a job at a hardware store. Jake didn't feel sorry for him, but he didn't feel hatred either. Harding was a cautionary tale,
written in the flesh. A reminder that silence isn't neutral. Silence chooses a side every time. Brady Lawson's case was adjudicated in juvenile court. The details were sealed. But Jake heard through Megan that Brady was sent to a residential program in another state. Connor's family never came back. Kyle Dunn testified against everyone, including himself, and was placed in a diversion program. Jake saw Kyle once, weeks later, at the gas station on Route 12. Kyle looked at him with eyes that held something Jake hadn't expected. Not fear, not hatred, but shame. Real, living, permanent shame. Kyle opened his mouth, closed it, and walked away. Jake let him go. Some things didn't need words. Some things just needed time and distance and the long, grinding work of living with what you'd done. On Jake's first day at the shop, he walked in wearing clean work gloves and a face free of bruises for the first time in a month. The mechanic who ran the floor, a quiet man named Gus, who'd been turning wrenches since before Jake was born, handed him a toolbox and pointed at a transmission on the lift. "You know anything about cars?" "I know they break," Jake said. Gus grunted. "Good start. Everything else I'll teach you." Jake's phone buzzed during his first break. Savannah. "How's day one?" "Greasy, loud, perfect. You still owe me a real thank you." Jake stared at the message. His lip twitched. Something warm spread through his chest. Not the heat of anger or the burn of adrenaline. Something quieter. Something that felt dangerously like hope. He typed back, "You're alive. That's the thank you." He put the phone in his pocket, picked up a wrench, and got back to work. That evening, Jake drove home to the trailer park. His mother was sitting on the new porch steps, drinking tea from a mug that had a chip on the rim. The sun was going down, and the light caught her face, and for the first time in months, maybe years, she looked like she wasn't waiting for the next disaster. "Good day?" she asked. "Yeah, Mom. Good day." "You smell like engine oil." "Better than blood." She laughed. A real laugh. The sound of it hit Jake somewhere between his ribs and his spine, and he had to turn away for a second because the tears came fast and without permission. He sat beside her on the new steps. The wood was solid. The screws were tight. Somewhere across town, a man with silver hair was probably asking Chains the same question he asked every night. "How's the boy?" And somewhere in Austin, a lawyer with sharp eyes was filing one more document in a case that had already changed a town. And somewhere in Ironfield, a janitor was locking up a school where the cameras worked, and the adults showed up, and the hallways belonged to every kid who walked through them. Jake Morrison didn't save Ironfield. Ironfield wasn't saved. It was cracked open. And the light that got in wasn't heroic or dramatic. It was just honest. It was just a boy who saw someone trapped and recognized the feeling. A boy who chose a punch over silence. A boy who refused to sign his name to a lie, even when every hand that mattered tried to force the pen. He sat on those porch steps with his mother and watched the sun go down, and held the future in his oil-stained hands like something fragile that he was finally strong enough to carry. And for the first time in his life, Jake Morrison didn't just survive the day. He belonged to it.